So the process of bioaccumulation and biomagnification are ones that we care a lot about, and they relate to the food chain, and then later on we'll revisit these when we talk about environmental toxins and risk. The thing you should know is that bioaccumulation is really necessary in order to talk about biomagnification. So our bodies and the bodies of most individual organisms out there have processes for getting rid of toxins so they don't build up. So alcohol is a good example. You drink alcohol, your body processes it out in a couple hours. But there are certain toxins that don't get processed out. And these are things like mercury, or they get processed out very, very slowly. DDT is another example, dioxins, polychlorinated biphenyls. They get stored up, and most of them are lipid soluble, which means that any part of your body that happens to have a lot of lipids, including the lipids that surround nerve cells and help speed up the rate at which information is transmitted, which is why they can sometimes accumulate quite heavily in the brain. So in order for something to become biomagnified, first it has to be able to accumulate in the body of an organism. When that happens, as you have individuals getting eaten and passing on their nutrients and other things up the food chain, organisms higher up in the food chain are going to accumulate more and more of these compounds. So those bioaccumulated substances like mercury are going to become much more concentrated higher up the food chain than they are lower down. And let's take a look at that with respect to a food chain. So here we're going to talk just using mercury as an example, and I'm going to use some nice round numbers so it's easy to see. But these phytoplankton are living in water where they take in all of their nutrients from the water around them, and perhaps even some mercury they got in through one of many different ways of pollution happening. So maybe these phytoplankton have only 1 part per million, 1 ppm, of mercury in each individual phytoplankton. However, a zooplankton, a little water bug, as it were, doesn't eat just one at a time. It eats a whole bunch. And so all of the mercury from its food is accumulated into each individual zooplankton. So now each individual zooplankton has maybe 10 parts per million because it is accumulating and storing up all of the mercury from all of its food. And now you can see where a fish that has to eat a whole bunch of these little guys is starting to accumulate all of the mercury in it. And maybe at this point we're talking about little fish where the concentration of mercury is something like 100 parts per million because they have all of the mercury from their food, which has all of the mercury from its food. And now when you get up to something like people or top predators, they've accumulated all of the food, all of the mercury that's found in all of the food that was required to feed them, because we know this whole issue of the rule of 10. You have to eat a whole lot of your food, and now we're talking about stuff like dolphins, humans accumulating a lot of mercury, which is why there are strong arguments, maybe if you look at the Seafood Watch information put out by the Montgomery Bay Aquarium, or even information at the Norwalk Aquarium, they're recommending fish that are eating lower down in the food chain, not just because of the, conservation of energy in the ecosystem, but also because then you're eating things that are not accumulating quite as much mercury and other pollutants. And so things like trout that eat lower down or catfish that eat lower down are better for you than eating top predators like tuna and swordfish, and way better than eating some of those really high predators like dolphins and other toothed whales, which is why those are not healthy choices, among other reasons.